Hi, it's Michael and Anthony here presenting Small Business Banter. A healthy micro and small business sector means a successful economy and a more vibrant society. Small Business Banter is about helping regional business owners better prepare for the current challenges, but also for the next stage of business success. I'm Michael Kerr, founder of Kerr Capital, advisors to business owners. Each week, with Anthony Turner from the Small Business Mentoring Service, we'll interview a different small business expert or a fellow business owner and get them to share their best tips and insights for you, the listeners. Small Business Banter is brought to you from the studios of 104.7 Gippsland FM and is heard across Australia on the Community Radio Network. Thanks also to our supporters, Kerr Capital and the Small Business Mentoring Service. Okay, so welcome to another edition of Small Business Banter Radio. Very pleased to be joined today by Louise Brockman, who I've known for a while now. She's founder and CEO of the Advisory Board Centre, and we'll get her to tell us about her extensive business background and the Advisory Board Centre. But welcome in, Louise.
Thank you, Michael.
And welcome in my co-host from the Small Business Mentoring Service, Anthony Turner.
Hi, Michael, and thanks again for having me on board.
It's great to have you both in. Looking forward to this chat, Louise. So just to set the scene, can you give us, you've built a very successful international business, advisory business and the Global Advisory Board Centre, which is your current business. Can you give us a little bit on your background and your current business?
Thanks, Michael. I guess I was brought up in small business and regional areas. I started my first business when I was 19 years old. And my parents had small businesses for many years, and it was a big adventure for us as a family. When they started a new business, we would all just, go, "Wow, that's great! We'll do something new and fresh." And I guess it was in my blood from early on. And my first business was a restaurant in far north Queensland, in beautiful Mission Beach, which I think is being hit by a cyclone at the moment. But we lost everything as a family when a cyclone hit, and I couldn't afford to go to university and I couldn't get a job. So I thought, well, I know how to run a business, so I'm going to do that. I worked in corporate for a period of time, but I really missed being in business. And I started my last business back in 2000, and I wanted to really grow it. It was a professional services business. It was helping SMEs with their outsourced human resources, and built a software package around that. But when I was really wanting to grow it, I thought I need to really make sure I'm very cautious and deliberate in the decisions I make about what's next, because I've got this really wonderful opportunity to grow. But I was second-guessing the decisions that I made. And the reason why I was second-guessing the decisions is a year before I developed a software package and launched it into the market, and I misjudged the time it took to launch something in the market. And I ended up having to sell everything that I owned to keep the business going. So a year later, when I had the opportunity to grow that business, I thought, I don't want to be back in that space again. If I want to grow this business, I want to be confident, and I don't want to mess it up and put myself at risk. So I put together an advisory board for my business. Didn't really know what it was, but I knew I needed external influence to make sure if I make a decision, is it a good one? I don't know. I wanted to road test it with other people. And that's when it changed my life, Michael. We ended up growing that business to 135 offices in 8 countries in 5 years. And
wow.
When I sold that business, and a lot of those offices were in regional areas too. And so when I sold that business, I just felt so grateful for what the advisory board had done for me, that I spent 5 years researching, testing and validating the advisory board sector globally. And then that laid the foundations to what we are today.
It's a hell of a story. You've lived and breathed small business, and not only the highs, but also the lows. From at a family level and a personal level, you put everything on the line. So, it's certainly a great foundation for building this current business. Though to to be open and willing to seek advice. We on this program, we're encouraging people into business. We're encouraging people in business to get a better outcome from their business, whatever that might be. And we often talk about communication being critical. But what can you just talk about where you see the hierarchies of support for business owners that will suit some. We have our co-sponsor small business mentoring service at the low cost to free level. But where do you see the hierarchy of different kinds of mentoring and support business owners can access?
It's a really good question, and we've done a lot of research around where and why businesses at every stage of their journey access advice. The different levels of advice, I think, and one is not more important than the other or better than the other. It's just saying what is the right one that's fit for purpose for the situation that you're in at that period of time. So this was, I live and breathe advisory boards, Michael. I'm probably the most biased person with regards to advisory boards, but you do know where the boundaries are when it's appropriate and when it's not. But if we look at the market itself about where businesses access their advice, it really goes from the informal level through to the most formal. If you look at the informal level of getting advice, it starts from family and friends, people who know you and love you and want the best from you and for you, and they've been providing advice to you since the day you were born, whether you want it or not. That it's very
unprompted advice.
That's right. But it's very supportive and they want the best for you personally. So that's what we call support. Then you get peers in business. So you get another business owner that you then connect in with each other, and it's a peer-to-peer relationship. It's extremely informal, but really supportive. We've done a lot of work up in the Mackay region, and when I was talking to some business owners up there about peers in business and how important it is, they said it's not peers in business, it's peers in business. So it's a peer-to-peer relationship. And I really love that because it is that level of informality, but really important mutual support. Then you get business network groups and informal advisory boards. Business network groups, like you might go to a chamber of commerce, you might go to a business group where it's you swap opportunities, you look for immediate sort of feedback to each other, and that's really important. And I think important in the socialisation of business owners, where people say it's lonely in business. It's important to get out of our own bubble of saying this is just about me, to then socialise with other people that are in a similar situation. Informal advisory boards is where the market has been in the past, not so much now, where a business owner will chair their own advisory board, put on beer and pizza, maybe their local accountant, their local lawyer, maybe another business owner, and do it informally. No one's paid, but generally they last for about 6 months and they kind of fizzle out over a period of time. Then you have the one-on-one relationships, like a business coach, a mentor, a consultant, or someone who's a specialist like an accountant or lawyer, where there's that one-to-one relationship. It may be paid, it may be unpaid, but this is when I think business owners really start to get targeted support, and it's very helpful for a period of time. I think ethics really play a part in when you're asking for someone to mentor you and you don't pay them. Be really careful about the way that you manage that relationship and don't take it for granted as a business owner. So we're expecting someone to provide all their advice and support and not pay them. There's an ethics issue at some point if you're benefiting from that. So we can talk about that later if you like. But business owners sometimes have, like me, unrealistic expectations of one person to have the answer for everything about their business. And I think we all need to be careful as mentors and as advisors to be really careful about where those boundaries are, of when we should be providing advice and when we should stop when it starts getting outside of our area of expertise or knowledge. Then the next level of formalisation is a formal advisory board where there's a chair, there's external advisors, there's a charter, so everyone's focused on some critical aspects to what's important to the business, and they're measuring impact. The advisory boards meet 4 to 6 times a year. And then the most formal level of engagement is governance boards, where you have a full board of directors. It's legally binding, and that is It's a serious undertaking because directors become personally liable and could go to jail if the decisions are made. But it's also binding on the business. If you've got a board of directors that make decisions, that business then implements on those decisions. So it's really quite a large spectrum of where you get advice.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, Louise, how would you recommend that somebody say, look, I'm a business owner and wherever I'm located and everything else, and I'm sort of looking at some sort of, stages of growth for my business. How would I go about, effectively getting together an advisory board, and what are the things that I should be looking for?
It's a good question, Anthony, because when people are considering an advisory board, they sometimes jump straight to the who component. Who do I know? And it may not necessarily be the right approach. There's a bit of homework to do beforehand. One of the processes that I go through, Anthony, it'd be good to hear what you do from the mentoring aspect too, is that when a business says, I know I need something, I don't know what it is, and then I don't know who, we help them to focus on what are the top 3 priorities for your business in the next 18 months. Right? What are the key areas that you really need to focus on? And when you work on what are the things that really matter, not everything, but just the key things that are going to really drive whatever their what's next is, whether it's to build out of being a startup to a scale up, whether it's about a business that wants to grow or it needs to change or it needs to exit. Having that line of sight of what's next and getting clarity around the top priorities around that is a really great starting point. If the technique that I use is looking at those top 3 priorities and then work out what is the right structure that's going to work for you to be able to achieve that. Is it that I need a mentor, or do I need an advisory board, a type structure that would help me get through that? And then
it's quite a process in it. It's quite a process even just to get to that stage where you might be as an owner comfortable that this is the right sort of counsel I need, but no doubt you work closely with them. Just to and I'll just let everyone know that on today's edition of Small Business Banter, we are chatting with Louise Brockman, who's CEO and founder of the Global Advisory Centre. Louise, what are some of the businesses and types of owners that you've working with through your organisation that are taking advantage of an advisory board, and what are some of the outcomes you're seeing for those owners and those businesses?
Yeah, there are different stages. So you have the scale-ups through to $1.5 million in turnover, where they will generally start with an advisory board of one, like a mentor in the space that you work in, Anthony, and then scale up into an advisory board structure over time as they start to build momentum. The $1.5 to $10 million turnover businesses use advisory boards a lot, and that's really starting to build disciplines inside their business and fill the knowledge gaps inside as well. Generally, it takes about 3 months to establish an advisory board, and then the businesses over 10 million to 100 million, they go through different stages, but they're always looking at a particular issue or opportunity to be able to focus on.
They may even have a couple of boards potentially when they've got different types of problems.
Yeah. That's absolutely the rise at the moment, Michael. You get an all-of-business advisory board, but project-based advisory boards is absolutely on trend at the moment.
One of the key things you just touched on there, Louise, is the fact that, often these advisors and everything else really should be about filling knowledge or skills gaps in terms of how you're going to develop and grow the businesses. And I think also too, and please correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's typically to do so more on a strategic rather than an operational level.
That's right. And that's where knowing where the boundaries are, ethical boundaries between roles, so you don't create issues around duplicating your management disciplines, but also not becoming a shadow director as well. We say that advisory boards generally focus at context, not content. As soon as it moves into content, you're actually diminishing the value of the voices that are sitting around the table, the people you've got access to.
So with what's a typical advisory board? Could it be 2, 3, 4 people?
Yeah, the most common structure, there are many ways. It's not regulated or legislated, so it can take a lot of different forms. But the most common structure is there's an independent certified chair that establishes the advisory board. It takes about 3 months to do that. And then there's two internal representatives, the business owners, could be business partners, could be an owner and investor, could be an owner with their key person inside their business, and then two external advisors. So that's the most common approach, is having 5 people around the table. Could be more, it could be less, it just really depends. The smaller the business, the more agile it can become. So a pop-up advisory board is a very popular structure for a small business, where they'll have a chair that works as a mentor on a monthly basis, and then they bring advisors as needed to the boardroom table. That's very popular and it's very effective as well.
Yeah, so I imagine, I do a lot of work with owners coming up to the end of the cycle of owning a business, but they're not it takes a while for them to build trust or to learn to trust their advisors, and I think there's a really big there's an opportunity missed, because owners very stoic and they've built the business, and they kind of want to do it all themselves often, and that's it's admirable, but there's a point where it becomes counterproductive. But so how do you start to shape these owners to actually see the value of external counsel, and how do you show them how to trust, pick the right kind of advisory board members?
It's an important question, because trust is a really hard thing. You've got to earn it. You can't win. And if a business owner doesn't know someone, how do they build that trust? And that was an issue that we had to address early on in the piece, with regards to how do businesses access people that they don't know. In the Advisory Board Centre, we address it in a way where it's problematic, where everyone wants to be an advisor or a mentor to somebody else, and a lot of people shouldn't. So what is the foundation and the barrier to entry for people doing this? In the Advisory Board Centre model, we decided to take a quality perspective to our advisory board community. So as an example, when people approach us to join our advisory board community, we select less than 10% of those that apply. And then from that, when businesses come to us in our free service to be able to talk about what is my need and what are my challenges, what's my structure, and then profiling what kind of background is going to be the best background and meet that need for that priority for that business, not just because I know them. And when they are able to then connect with these people, you've got escalated trust, because they've all earned the right to be there. The other thing too, I think, Michael, is really important, is independence. The Advisory Board Centre, what was really important in our establishment phase was to make sure that we don't charge the business sector for the work that we do in the connecting piece, but also we don't take percentage fees, rebates, or any kickbacks out of any arrangement. But also we don't filter people in or out. The business owner has the right to choose and not choose who they want and what's right for their business. I think business owners, though, need to step up and do better due diligence with regards to the way that they're evaluating their advisors. Make sure you do your homework. Because
it's true of any professional relationship, for your business. You need to choose well, and it's not they're not all commodity providers.
No. And a lot of advisors aren't consultants. They're not there to consult. They're not a gun for hire. So if you want to tap into some of the finest minds that are going to make a difference for you, take the time and select well.
Yeah. Touching on a couple of interesting points in there, and I think one of the things of the work that I've done, Louise, and a lot in regional communities and everything else, I find that there is a couple of key issues that I see. Oftentimes, you've got the people who, particularly in regional communities, that are on every board or committee and things that are around them, and oftentimes a lot of those people are untrained and even though they've got experience, they're untrained in the sort of the true requirements of boards and or committees and or whether that's advisory or statutory type boards and things like that. What sort of advice would you give to our regional listeners, because that's our primary audience, about how to select those sorts of people and how not to fall into the trap of, we've got a vacancy and we need to fill it?
Yeah. So the first component on that one, Anthony, is being real crystal clear about your priorities. What do you want? What does your business need? And what do you need personally? And then choose the structure that best fits the nature of the business, whether it's a mentoring relationship or an advisory board relationship. Be really clear about an expression of interest. Put an expression of interest out to your own immediate networks and send it out to the networks that you don't know, and then go through a selection process, and then interview them around the same time, so you're consistent in the way that you're doing that. So create a very simple interview guide, very simple questions about the things that matter, and then look for the way that they are really genuinely interested in your business. It's not a job interview. You want them to be really curious about your business and about you and wanting to support you. So you've got to look for those kind of clues. The other component to that is look for people that have got the ongoing development. So look for the credentials like the chair certification, approved advisors, people that have invested and continue to invest in their professional development, because any advisor or mentor right now needs to be focusing on the future, not just what we've done in the past. That's going to potentially be irrelevant for the future. We need future thinkers supporting business owners, whatever stage they're in, to be focusing on the what's next.
Yeah, very good point.
Yeah, it's and it's so hard. That range under 1.5 million, probably up to even 2, 3, 5 million. You can often have completely owner-centric businesses, and they are running hard, sometimes quite successful, often moderately successful, and but they really do find it terribly hard to extract themselves out of the day-to-day, to see the opportunities and to be able to manage them better and draw on other people to help them. But it's that trusting. So I love the work you're doing, and you're really setting high standards for the industry, if you like. You're leading the industry to say, well, not anybody can be an advisory board member, and that's you leave it to the owners to choose, but you're putting in place some really high standards. So outside of those turnover groupings, if a business doesn't quite feel ready for an advisory board, or they want a more of a pathway, what other ways would you suggest they start to ready themselves to take counsel? Is it things like the mentoring service, or is it the informal stuff? Is there a pathway?
I think there are several pathways. Again, getting clarity around what you're looking for, and then research what the options are, and then look for what your budget is, whether it's a zero budget or you've got you allocate funds to it. Be really clear about that. I see the three most common ways for a business to build an advisory board over time is, one, if they're not ready but they know that they want to move into it and grow into it over time, is a mentoring relationship for 3 to 6 months, generally, until they're ready. The other way is to bring on a certified chair as a mentor to have an advisory board of one, and then build up that capacity in your knowledge base over a period of time, versus a business that says, you know what, I'm ready, and I really want to take seriously my path to the future. They then go through a board starter process, which takes 3 months to do with the chair. Generally allocate half a day a month, so it doesn't hit your cash too hard, and it doesn't hit your time too hard. So you can have enough room there to still get on with business and get things done.
But how many business owners do you think are in that sort of stage of thinking they need an advisory board, short term or long term? Is there particular characteristics that some owners have that lend themselves to being an advisory board type business, or you think there's a lot more that just need to have the benefits explained?
Yeah, traditionally it's any business that's ambitious for what's next, the future. So 75% of businesses are having advisory boards because they want to grow. That's changing at the moment though, Michael. So the rise of project-based advisory boards, which could be an advisory board for only 90 days, is to navigate a decision. It could be around response to COVID, climate change, corporate social responsibility, and changing consumer behaviour. That's a big one at the moment. So project-based advisory boards is a good option for that.
Yeah, so we're bringing it back to make it accessible and short term if needed, or project based or outcome based, and but I think there's been I think most people are aware of public company boards and and more structured boards, and it seemed like such a long way away from a typical small business. So the work you're doing is highly valuable, and unfortunately, we do need to wrap up today's discussion, Louise. But thank you so much. There was an excellent insight to the range of ways that an owner can engage with external counsel to really get a bit of a feel for it. So, as well as telling us what you do at the Global Advisory Board Centre. So, just wanted to say thank you very much. What's the website that potential advisory board members or indeed businesses could look at to get some more information?
Advisoryboardcentre.com is the website. You can connect in with me on LinkedIn if anyone wants to do that. And we've got a new State of the Market report being released in May as well. So the growth of this sector has been phenomenal in the last 2 years. So keep an eye out for that research report.
Well, that's great. We'll post that to the show notes and maybe even get you back later in the year to talk some more about that, because it's relevant to every business that I've ever worked with, those that aspire to do more and different and better. So, Louise, thanks again for your time today. Really appreciate it. Go well.
Thank you.
So that's all for today's episode of Small Business Banter. Anthony and I continue to be inspired by bringing you small business experts and other small business owners and hearing their stories. For any of the links, resources or information we've talked about on the show today, or to contact Anthony or myself, please head over to smallbusinessbanter.com, or you can find us on both Facebook and Instagram. Anthony and I would love you to tune in at the same time next week for another episode of Small Business Banter.